All right, hello. I hope that you're watching this video before you start to dive into all the resources about identifying change with run charts. You first read about run charts in your improvement science texts, particularly your Hinnant-Crawford Improvement Science in Education, a primer. And I think you've also worked with run charts in a previous course as part of your program. So you've been familiar with them, or at least you kind of know what they might offer you. Now, depending on the nature of the type of data you collected, it might be possible that a run chart analysis is going to be really helpful for you, especially if you collected counts of things or proportions of things, ratios of things, if you collected things systematically over time at kind of these repeated intervals. That can be really helpful. But it might be possible that some of the data you collected doesn't necessarily fit with run chart analysis. Or it might, but you might not have enough for run chart analysis, in which way, even like a qualitative data analysis approach, or looking at maybe the small scale changes within that data, a la kind of some of the skills that are in the survey and quantitative resources, that might be more appropriate. So I'm just prefacing that with this. These are really helpful tools. You may or may not be able to engage with this with your dissertation work. All just kind of depends on what data you collected. But I still want you to work through some of these resources so that you can see how important and helpful run charts can be and run chart analysis can be. Because if your next PDSA cycle is going to be an improvement upon your most recent change idea and intervention cycle, you're collecting data. And then when you do another cycle, you might then have more data for your run chart analysis. Or you might understand the benefits of them. And so the next time as you're thinking about heading into your ACT phase of what to do next, you might even think about, well, what type of data do I need to collect next? Do I have data like this baseline data now that I can input in this run chart and then continue to collect that data and see how it changes over time in the next change idea or the next change cycle that I implement? So these ideas are still really helpful in thinking about how we are collecting data and analyzing data as improvers. So some things to think about. When you are engaging with run chart analysis, you're still thinking like a detective, not a prosecutor. Your job isn't to prove what you already believe, but to let the data tell its story. And here, run charts are this like visual story of it, right? It's this visual timeline where we can really see patterns and trends. Run charts reveal patterns that might surprise you and challenge your assumptions about what's working. It might also show that there wasn't a whole lot of change. So that might also be you might have assumed that there might have been this big jump in change when in reality there wasn't. That is still really, really helpful information. It's kind of this notion of, this was back in, I think maybe it was the survey or quant video, this notion of like, disconfirming data or mixed results or surprising results aren't necessarily failures. They're actually really helpful in understanding how our intervention is working or not. Here with run chart analysis with an improvement science lens, when we're engaging in small scale projects in particular, good enough beats perfect when lives are at stake, or good enough beats perfect when our goal is really just to work collaboratively with other people and maybe help to improve our context or our organization in certain ways. In improvement science, we make decisions with imperfect data because waiting for statistical perfection means delaying help for real people. It means delaying some of these improvements to systems that might influence someone's life, someone's learning, someone's experience, job retention, right? Learn to balance rigor with practical action. So it's just this notion. I'm not trying to say good enough and like take the rigor down a few notches. That's not what I mean. It just means that we don't have to take this really, really expansive researcher or quantitative data analysis mindset that we need a whole lot of data with a whole lot of participants in order to generate any findings that are meaningful. No, we can work with small scale projects with fewer numbers of participants with maybe smaller data sets and still be able to make some decisions, still be able to determine or at least decide like, hey, is this working at all or not? Or are these changes meaningful for us? And what do we need to do differently? What do we need to do next? So again, when we're working improvement science, we're often running in these like small scale projects to create change over time. We're not engaging in one project that takes 3 years, right? That's too long from an improvement science lens. Context is also everything. All right, we're thinking run chart analysis. A run chart without understanding the system, the people, and the circumstances behind the data is just pretty lines on paper, right? Like we have to understand the context. We know that this run chart is just a piece of the puzzle and it's a visual way of demonstrating and showing change or not change, but it's helpful to understand like the context and all of the things that are pressing upon how those data points might be moving or adjusting. Always ask what was happening in the real world when these data points were collected. I remember being a classroom teacher and data was collected, and I remember this general feeling of, especially with my end of course tests, certain points of trying to talk about these certain students or student achievement and whether or not it was changing or what my total class scores were, etc. And it felt like what was really missing and what my administrators, what my leaders were really not asking questions about were the context of some of those responses. And it was, it could be really helpful to understand like why so-and-so might have scored really poorly. Oh, that's because they have a number of different things working for them, right? They were absent 60 days of the class. And rightfully so, because they were like without a home and kind of hopping around. They were often hungry. They were often tired. They would often sleep in class. Like that is helpful context to know. That was what the real world was happening for this one student when some of these data points were collected. And so just keep in mind that in the beauty of simplifying some things with our run chart analysis, to keep in mind that there's often some real world complexity behind some of these visuals. Small signals can indicate big changes. Again, this is kind of comes to, is this practically significant to us? Don't dismiss subtle patterns or modest improvements. In complex systems, small, sustained changes often signal that something meaningful is shifting beneath the surface. You can even think of this in like a training mindset. Like if I'm training for a race or if I'm training for a marathon, I expect to make these little small improvements over time. Where if I look at my running data for the past 5 days, those small little changes might feel like nothing. But when I step back and look at weeks of training, then I can see, oh, I needed all those really small steps to get to these really big steps, to get to this big improvement. And your interpretation drives action. It's not just the run chart itself. It's not just what the visual looks like. It's how you read it and how you interpret it. So how you read a run chart directly influences what improvement actions get taken next. Poor interpretations can waste resources, delay progress, or even cause harm to the people you're trying to help. I waste a lot of time. You can do this on your own, but you can also collaborate with your stakeholders. Remember that improvement science is collaborative. It's user-centered. Can we make sense of this run chart analysis together? And what does this mean? And, what if we even expanded this run chart analysis, and how can we keep it going with some of our next change ideas, your next change cycles that you might implement? 3 coaching tips for your run chart analysis. Tip number 1, embrace the messiness as information. Right? So this is very similar to coaching in the qualitative work of like real life is messy. Real world contexts are messy. Don't clean up or explain away the messy parts of your data too quickly. Outliers, gaps, and unexpected patterns often contain the most valuable insights about what's really happening in your system. Let the messiness teach you before you tidy it up. So resist the urge to sugarcoat it, to clean it. That drop might be really helpful understanding the context of when that data was collected. What was it that was there that signaled such a dramatic shift or change? Like that's that's information that's so helpful, even if it's going not in the direction you expect it to go. Your goal here is to be a detective, not a prosecutor. So the goal is to collect all this information so that you can make informed decisions moving forward. Tip number 2, always connect patterns back to your system of knowledge. To system knowledge, this notion of we're trying to think of these patterns, the data that we're charting, that we're mapping as like part of a system, right? And we can see we might see the complexity of a system in qualitative data analysis in our codes and categories. We might see the complexity in our quantitative and survey analysis. We can also see the complexity of our system in our run chart analysis. So for every pattern you identify, and there's some strategies and some resources here in this module, like the different types of patterns we look for in run chart analysis. It's not just to see that things go up and improve, like we might be looking for clusters or other things. So there's some resources there. For every pattern you identify, ask, what could have caused this? And what should we test next? This prevents you from becoming a passive chart reader and keeps you thinking like an active improvement scientist. So this question, what should we test next? It's not like we're coming to these final end-all be-all conclusions. We've solved our problem of practice. This thing worked or it didn't work. We might engage in some of that reflection, but the goal is to stay open and to keep going, to keep improving. To be an improver means you take this posture of like constantly coming back and improving these systems. It's not just a one and all be all 30-day change idea cycle, right? So it's what should we test next? What should we do next? Tip number 3, start with simple questions. Before diving into complex statistical rules, ask basic questions. Is performance getting better or worse? Are we seeing consistency or chaos? What story does this data want to tell? Let intuition guide you toward the right analytical tools. So this notion of, we can use numbers, run chart analysis, quantitative analyses as tools, but even as the leader, researcher, improvement scientist, etc., scholar, practitioner, our own intuition is still so helpful in these moments. So it's not just the run chart and we should do this next because the chart says so. Like, pull in yourself, pull in your other stakeholders, recognize that these are human beings making decisions, and collectively, what is even your collective intuition about what to do next, or what analytical tools you might need next. And so lean on your intuition as you need to, but do start with simple questions and see where those simple questions and your intuitive responses, even based off your first kind of run of analyses, where they take you. All right. That's all I have for this video. Again, reminder that this is just one tool that can help you. This is one tool that you might be able to use now, one tool that you might be able to use in the future. What can you collect now? What can you collect in the future? What maybe has already been collected as baseline data that you can pull in? And it might not have been data that you collected as part of your dissertation work, but your organization has it as baseline data. That can also be really helpful. Okay, good luck.